Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of Roundabout Sports, presented by Interstate 70 Sports Media, where our passion is our profession. My name is Jeremy Carp. Thank you so much for tuning in this lovely Wednesday evening, at least lovely here in beautiful St. Louis, Missouri. Hopefully, the weather's nice where you're all tuning in as well. We have an amazing show tonight. We got Joe Pott on, hence the title of the show, Pot of Gold. Joe Pott is a longtime broadcaster. He's been the voice of the Cougars since 2008, a longtime fixture at SIUE, and let me tell you, a big part of KMOX, one of the longest running radio stations, not just in the country, but in the world. I'm telling you, you would be hard pressed to find a guy who keeps himself as busy as Joe does. But before that, we have quite a bit to talk about WrestleMania, and well, man, let me tell you, it's crazy about some of the things I'm about to mention from WrestleMania 38 this past weekend. It's 2022, and Stone Cold Steve Austin wrestled at 57 years old in presumably his final match. He main evented the first night, and he took on Kevin Owens and actually beat Kevin Owens in a no-holds-barred match. And, for the first couple minutes, it was off and on, kind of lackluster. Honestly, though, it got so much more entertaining, and I thoroughly, really enjoyed the show. So, yeah, absolutely enjoyed it. Great way to finish off night one. Night two had some interesting moments as well, and probably one of the most notable was the fact that Vince McMahon, at 76 years old, wrestled a match against former NFL player and longtime media personality Pat McAfee. Now, Pat McAfee had actually wrestled Austin Theory in the match prior and defeated Theory. But then he challenged McMahon, and believe it or not, Vince McMahon won. And the finish of it was just so weird. He punted a football into the chest of Pat McAfee. And then Stone Cold came out and stunned everybody, figuratively and literally. But yes, WrestleMania 38, you got Roman Reigns defeating Brock Lesnar to retain his title, as well as winning the WWE Championship from Brock Lesnar. You have Edge defeating AJ Styles. You got Bianca Belair defeating Becky Lynch for the Raw Women's title. And controversially, you got Charlotte Flair defeating Ronda Rousey for the SmackDown Women's Championship. And a lot of people they got a lot of questions about that one. I'm just going to say it. Especially because of how it ended. It really just ended on a big boot. So, yeah, not exactly anything spectacular to brag about. But, it is what it is. Now, with all that said, there is about two more pieces of wrestling news that I have to report. And one of them is Cody Rhodes, after appearing at WrestleMania 38, is back full-time as he appeared on Monday Night Raw just a couple nights ago. And the crowd went absolutely nuts. They are excited to see Cody Rhodes, who just a few years ago left to form All Elite Wrestling, which is now the number 2 wrestling promotion in North America and among the top 3 in the entire world. Now Cody Rhodes is back with WWE, where it all started. And a lot of people are very stunned about that. But, it is what it is. So, also, folks, tomorrow's opening day. Oh, I am so excited. This is going to be an absolutely phenomenal season, I feel like, for the St. Louis Cardinals, at least in the lineup. The problem comes in during the pitching. The rotation has so many question marks, and perhaps the biggest one is the back end of the rotation. Wainwright's the ace. He's the guy that's going to be locked down, locked in, and ready to roll. He's the one person you can depend on and the one person you never have to worry about. Then you have Steven Matz, for example, or Miles Michaelis. veterans who've struggled but have had decent years in the past. Then you got Jack Flaherty, who's injured. You got Alex Reyes, who's injured. And, here comes the news that came out earlier today that Jordan Hicks, who's usually the closer for the Cardinals, is now going to be the number 5 starter. And Ollie Marmol, the manager, has made it clear, though, it's going to be a progressive. How does the best word describe it? Oh, I know. Induction into the rotation, if you will. So basically, he's only going to pitch a couple innings when his first start comes up. The next start comes around, he's going to pitch maybe 4 or 5. It's just a process, It's like that ladder climbing up, and with each rung, each inning increases. Because you can't just throw a guy who's used to pitching an inning or two and expecting him to throw 7 long innings. That's not going to get the job done, especially for the St. Louis Cardinals. That said, folks, this season might as well be called the last dance, because Pujols is going to retire at the end of the year. Molina's going to retire, and we're pretty sure Wainwright's going to retire too. But enough about St. Louis Cardinals baseball for a second. Let's go to the other side of Missouri, where we got the Kansas City Royals, and tomorrow on their opening day, they'll play the Cleveland Guardians. It's so weird still having to say that name. Anyway, with the Royals, Bobby Witt Jr., who is the number 2 prospect overall in Major League Baseball, is going to make this start at third base. He will be the youngest player in Royals history to make his debut at opening day at just under 22 years old. And I am very excited to see what this guy can do on the big league level on a consistent basis. The Royals went 74-88 last year, which is not really that terrible, especially from some of the more recent seasons they had before that. And personally, I feel like when you got to line up with Whit Merrifield, Salvador Perez, Nicky Lopez, and now Bobby Witt Jr., you got some true guys in there that can actually do some damage at the plate. The American League Central is not a strong division. And to me, the Twins may be the only tough obstacle for them. But other than that, honestly, the Royals can finish as high as you can finish first. I mean, obviously, it was division for the taking at the start of a season, but at the same time, there's something about this Kansas City team. They didn't make a whole lot of upgrades. The most notable one, of course, is the fact that they got their old ace, Zach Greinke, back. But it's the fact that they didn't downgrade. They didn't lose a lot of guys. They didn't really regress, which is huge. It's just as important as progressing. So I'm really excited to see what the Kansas City Royals can do this year. I do think, honestly, at worst, they'll finish third in the division. I do not see the Tigers doing anything worthwhile this year. And I think the Guardians still have a lot of work to do, even though they just signed an extension with Jose Ramirez for $124 million, which is definitely a lot less than what he's worth. He is worth so much more than that. But I digress. Now, into football. Former Chief safety Tyrann Mathieu still hasn't decided where he wants to sign yet. He's not in any rush to sign, even though the draft is only weeks away, and it would create a bigger scenario as to where he would want to go. Most people, including myself, think he's going to go with the New Orleans Saints. It's in his hometown area. He went to LSU, and honestly, they could use some help in the secondary because New Orleans already has a great front defensive line. It's just help in the secondary that they need. So that about covers it for the first main part of some of the quick hits that we got here on Roundabout Sports. I do want to let you all know that we are on YouTube. You can find us at Interstate 70 Sports Media. You can find us on Facebook and on Twitter at Interstate 70 Sports Media. Our podcast is at Roundabout Sports. And our website is interstate70sports.media. Now, I want to also make this clear. We have business cards now. I know it may not be the most glamorous thing out there, but If you're in your community in the St. Louis area and you happen to see one on any of the billboards or any of your local stores, there you go. We're expanding. And don't worry, Kansas City market, you guys are next. And the rest of Missouri, we haven't forgotten about you here either. Because our passion's our profession, and our passion is caring about all of you. With that said, folks, it is my pleasure to introduce this gentleman on as our featured guest tonight. He's an on-air personality at KMOX. He is a media relations and athletic broadcaster at the Southern Illinois University of Edwardsville Cougars. He's worked at the Gateway Grizzlies. He's worked at Valley Sports. He went to the University of Dayton. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome on this week's episode of Roundabout Sports, the one, the only, Joe Pott.
Thank you, Jeremy. I appreciate it.
Hey, no problem, Joe. Thank you so much for being on today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, happy to be here.
So we are literally just hours away from this, as far as this broadcast goes, hours away from opening day. What has you most excited about this Cardinals team?
Boy, that's, I think it's the lineup, and you mentioned it in your open that the lineup is certainly the more stable of the two sides, between the hitters and the pitchers. I think that it is safe to say that lineup is pretty well set. Now, can there always be improvement? Sure, I think there can. I do like I like the mix they have at DH, which is really the biggest question coming into this season, right? I mean, you're pretty set as far as around the rest of the diamond goes. Maybe there was some question, were they going to whether Nolan Gorman was going to be up and make this team. He obviously did not yet. That doesn't mean we won't see him during the year, but this is a lineup and a defense, obviously, that was outstanding in 2021. So I like the way that Ali Marmol has kind of set the lineup up the last couple of days of spring and what we believe it's going to look like for opening day, or at least for, the start of the year. Obviously, Albert Pujols is going to start on opening day. That's certainly that's really exciting. I can't imagine what the ovation is going to be like inside Busch Stadium. Yeah, when he pops out in the truck or the convertible or whatever, and he gets that introduction, it's going to be pretty crazy in there. And you have to think as well, you have to remember, this is the first time since the 2019 home opener that Busch Stadium in St. Louis has had a full home opener experience, right? Last year there were 12,500 or 15,000 fans, something like that, in the stadium. In 2020 there were no fans in the stadium. A lot of these fans have been waiting since 2019 to get back in there and have a real opening day experience, and now you're going to add to it that Albert Pujols is back.
Yeah, and this is going to be, I believe, his 22nd consecutive opening day for Albert Pujols, whether it be with, of course, the Cardinals or the Angels. The fact that you've played 22 consecutive opening days, and I was actually just a couple nights ago watching there's a YouTube channel about Cardinal Baseball Classics, and one of the games they have on their YouTube channel is it was the home opener in 2001, which was Pujols' rookie year. And, the ovation he got then as the rookie. Now imagine him as a 42-year-old who's 21 home runs away from 700 career blasts. And we know for a fact this is the last ride for him. Like, he is retiring at the end of this season.
Yeah, unless he pulls a Tom Brady on us, right? Or a Brett Favre.
I really hope not, because as much as I love the scenario they're in. 3 guys, Wainwright, Molina, and Pujols. It's just so poetic to have them all retire at the same time. It's just sailing them off into the sunset, and hopefully, if we're fortunate enough, go out on a high note, win the big one, win the World Series, and cap off the career in the best way possible.
There's no question that these are 3, pillars in this franchise. And, I think myself, yes, as a media member, but I'm a fan. First of all, I'm a Cardinal fan. I've been a Cardinal fan. I grew up a Cardinal fan. So to think that you're seeing three of the very best to ever put on a Cardinals uniform. And like you said, now we're looking at the chance that they're going to play their last seasons together. And can you imagine if provided both Yadier Molina and Albert Pujols both retire at the end of this year, in 5 years, they're also probably going to go into Cooperstown together as Cardinals.
Yeah, that's another thing is the fact that, I mean, there's no doubt about it. Albert Pujols is a first ballot Hall of Famer. And in my opinion, Yadier Molina is a first ballot Hall of Famer. There
Agreed.
is, that case people can make regarding offensive numbers, but at the same time, I think it was only the first couple of 2 or 3 years he struggled when it came to offensive hitting. And ever since then, I mean, catchers also aren't exactly supposed to be the big sluggers on the team anyway. They're historically not. But at the same time, I mean, Yadier Molina is on the cusp of 2,000 RBIs. He's already over, I believe, 1,000 hits, let alone, no, he's over 2,000
Yeah,
hits,
it's
I mean.
2000. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got 2,112 hits. He only needs 29 home runs for 200 career home runs. And here's another thing. So, and that was my mistake earlier. He needs 2 RBIs to get 1,000. So I got the numbers a little mixed up. So he has 2,000 plus hits, but he only needs 2 RBIs to get over 1,000. But on top of that, for a guy that people say struggle, Joe, he has a career average of 280. That's actually pretty solid numbers right there.
Yeah, no question about it. I don't think there's any question. Um, Most people will tell you he's, in the top two, if not the best defensive catcher of all time. Some people will argue Buster Posey was better as far as his own era, but Buster Posey didn't even play all of his games behind the plate. He played so much
No,
first base, and Yachty's never done that. I mean, other than, a couple innings here or there, Yachty has caught, for all of his career.
right. And, the only time when you mentioned about Yachty playing like first or something is if the Cardinals are winning like 16-2 and they figured just for the heck of it, let's put Molina out there and just have some fun, give the crowd some more entertainment. Um Now, back onto the pitching. So I had mentioned at the beginning of the show at the top that pitching is definitely the biggest issue the Cardinals have. And what do you think about the state of the or not the rotation, the state of the bullpen, given the fact that Jordan Hicks is now the number 5 starter in the rotation?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that was, one of the things that still by the end of spring training we were still wondering about, right? We were still wondering how they're going to piece together, the end of a game. And obviously remains to be seen. It remains to be seen what Ali Marmol, values. Is it going to be naming a closer? It seems less likely to me naming a closer as opposed to, playing a little bit more matchups than maybe we've seen in the last couple of years. So that'll be the interesting thing is how he plays those matchups, who he chooses to use. You're going to see a lot of Cabrera, a lot of Gallegos, because those are the proven guys. They know what they can do. Obviously, Cabrera a little bit more against the left-handers. You've got Ryan Helsley, who is a hard-throwing right-hander as well. I think those are obviously your main guys are going to kind of fill those spots. TJ McFarland, again, against left-handers. I'll be interested to see where does Drew Verhagen fit in this role, right? Because he was talked about for the 5th starter spot for one thing. So is he going to be a long guy? Is he going to be a guy that you piggyback with Jordan Hicks? You mentioned Jordan off the top that he's going to be the 5th starter, but as you let the audience know that what Ali Marmol said today was, he's going to gradually work up to that. He didn't want to say opener. I mean, it really sounds like at least first couple of starts, it might be sort of an opener scenario where you see Jordan Hicks throw a couple of innings. But the idea is that he's going to build into a full starter. But until he does, you have to have somebody to piggyback, right? You have to have somebody to kind of take up a couple of innings. And it would seem to me like Drew Verhagen makes sense there. So, yeah, I think otherwise it might just be a lot more matchups.
I believe so as well. And you got a very strong, honestly, I don't think the bullpen is really affected as much by the loss of Hicks in as he goes into the rotation. Because honestly, looking at him, you got Gallegos, who to me is the top guy in that bullpen. I think Gallegos is the top guy. Cabrera to me is also another top guy. Helsley, you got Ryan Helsley. TJ McFarland, you had mentioned. We got Cody Whitley, Tyler Webb.
Cody Whit, that's
eh,
another one. That's a guy I didn't mention. You're right.
Yeah. Aaron. Then they even got Aaron Brooks in there and Johan Oviedo.
Aaron,
Um,
another guy too. I wonder if Aaron Brooks might not be one of those guys that can piggyback after a Jordan Hicks or be a kind of a long reliever. Maybe. I think all those things remain to be seen right now. Nick Whitgren is another guy that is going to be available in a variety of roles, probably.
yeah, there's a lot of good depth for the bullpen, and unfortunately, that is overshadowed by the fact that the Cardinals are, for lack of a better term, just completely screwed when it comes to their rotation. I mean, and in a way, it's nobody's fault for injuries. We're not saying it's fault for injuries, but you're going into your season with your ace being a 40-year-old. And don't get me wrong, I love Wainwright. I absolutely love Wainwright. But he wasn't who people expected to be the ace going into 2022. They
Yeah,
expected it to
that's
be Jack Flaherty. They
no,
expected
you're right.
Alex Reyes to be strong. Miles Michaelis, who had a great first year with the Cardinals, has struggled ever since to even stay on the field or on the mound. I liked having J.A. Happ. It's disappointing to me that they didn't bring him back. And I think the biggest issue of all is the fact that you have all this time in free agency to pick up someone and you don't capitalize. And all you get is Steven Matz, who definitely was not even a top 10 on the market at the peak of free agency.
Yeah, I think what that speaks to more than anything is just that I think the franchise obviously holds its players in high regard, and I understand that. I tend to default to their expertise when it comes to that. So I think with kind of the pieces that we've talked about, I think they feel like they can bridge that gap until Jack Flaherty gets back. Now, the worrisome thing there to me is you don't know when Jack Flaherty gets back to being Jack Flaherty, right? It's one thing to have him back on the mound and throwing. It's another thing back as he was, say, think pre June 1 or whatever it was when he got hurt last year when he was 8-1 to last season and he was truly looking like he was becoming that ace. So that's the question is when do you get that Jack Flaherty back and how do you bridge the gap before you get to that Jack Flaherty? I agree with you. I liked what Jay Happ and John Lester both brought this team last year at the trade deadline. And I thought at the time, and I said so on the air, that it was going to be that the biggest benefit was going to be to guys like a Jake Woodford or like a Johan Oviedo, who then got to go back to the minors and actually develop in the minors as they should have been. Which it turned out that was absolutely the case. Jake Woodford came back as a completely different pitcher in September. But I did like the addition of those guys of just sort of the steady veteran that can go out there. They're going to make their start and they're probably going to give you 5 innings. And that was a huge help. So, maybe that is those roles maybe are filled by somebody else. I think there's just a lot in this pitching staff that we'll have to wait and see how they start falling into those roles.
Yeah, we really have you know, we can't predict the future. We can only just kind of guess off of what what happens from then on. Um, so here's my next question about the division. So you take up the NL Central. Most people have the Cardinals and or the Brewers as the top two teams in the division. Pirates, they're going to be dead last. Cubs did not gain; they lost considerably. The Reds are in the middle of the field, in my opinion. Um, Where do you think that the Cardinals stack up against the Brewers this season?
Yeah, boy, I think that you're right when you say that the Brewers are probably going to be the biggest, um, the biggest challenge within the Central Division. Because I also don't feel like the Cubs have done a lot. We know the Reds have done a lot of moves going the other way, right? They're shipping out just about everybody. And the Pirates, yeah, have shown no interest really in competing, it seems. It's unfortunate. Um, but so yeah, I think the Brewers rather are definitely the challenge in the National League Central Division. And what is strong about the Brewers is what we talked about maybe being the question mark for the Cardinals, and that's the pitching. I think that they're far more set pitching wise than the Cardinals are. I don't know for sure yet about the lineup and who's going to hit and who's going to put up the offensive numbers for the Brewers. They added Andrew McCutchen in the offseason. They just added Victor Caratini because they had a backup catcher suspended um, that was actually done before the lockout, and they didn't announce it until this past week. So they signed, I think, Victor Caratini today or yesterday. So yeah, you've still got Yelich in the lineup. You've still got, as I said, now you've got Andrew McCutchen. Colton Wong is in that lineup. So I think they're going to be the biggest challenge, and that's going to be, I think, the race for the Central Division is going to be Milwaukee and St. Louis.
It really, yeah, it absolutely will in my because it seems like the Brewers are the team that's given the Cardinals the most trouble over the past 5 years, if not longer. But the only difference is then you've had teams like the Cubs and to a lesser extent the Reds actually competing as well. This year, I feel like it's just a two-team divisional race, and
I liked the Reds too before they really started shipping players out. They were really young in a lot of positions. They had a lot of, they still have Jonathan India up the middle. He's obviously a great player. But yeah, I liked what they had. They did sign Tommy Pham in the offseason, which I thought was an interesting move considering they were sort of shipping out players, and then to go get Tommy Pham, interested me a little bit. But yeah, I thought I liked where the Reds were going, but they went the opposite direction.
yeah, they really took a turn that not many of us expected. Um, so Joe, this is, I believe, your fourth year with the Cardinals radio crew. Is that correct?
Oh my
Oh,
gosh,
bless you.
excuse me. Yes, it is. It's my
You see,
fourth year.
you sneezed in excitement. There you go.
I started midway through the 2019 season. Um, did the uber strange 2020 season, did last season, and yes, I'm back for 2021, and I could not be more proud, excited to be part of this radio crew and to be part of covering the team, as I said, that I grew up cheering for.
What's the feeling inside the broadcast booth and a part of that KMOX crew without, the longtime voice, Mike Shannon, who last year was his last year?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I don't know the answer to that yet, to be honest. I've not been around the guys too much. I don't have a lot to do as far as spring training goes. So, John Rooney and Rick Horton are going to be the two main guys in the booth. You'll hear a lot of Mike Claiborne as you have for, I think this is going to be year number 16 for him in the booth there. So you hear a lot of him as well. And yeah, it's definitely going to be a transition. I mean, for anybody my age and older than me and on back, all we know is Mike Shannon in that broadcast booth. So it'll be different without hearing him in there.
I was gonna say, Mike Shannon was definitely a voice I grew up listening to. I always enjoyed the dynamic that he and John Rooney had, and then, of course, to generations of fans, they enjoyed the chemistry that Shannon and Jack Buck had going for them. And I can't wait to get some type of statue or something of Mike Shannon because I already got one of Jack Buck right
There you
here.
go.
Um,
Gonna
so
go this weekend. I think they're giving away this weekend a Mike
yeah,
Shannon bobblehead.
oh my gosh, I really got to. Well, I'm working on trying to get in contact with the Cardinals, get some press credentials going because that's pray the good Lord above. That'd be wonderful. Um, so you're also used to do play by play for the Gateway Grizzlies. Tell me about how you came about that job. Well, it looks like either I'm not clear signal wise or Joe isn't. So, well, we just lost Joe on that one. Well, that happens, folks. Hang on. He's still got the link. He can pop back in anytime. So, anyway, yes, this is the first year in well over 50 years that Mike Shannon will not be in the broadcast booth for the St. Louis Cardinals, and it is definitely going to be a big shock to many of us. But no, I'm definitely looking forward to it. I'm still excited for this spring and summer and fall, however long they go this season. I'm excited for it. Um, Give us 1 second, folks. We will be right back with more Interstate 70 Sports Media's Roundabout Sports. We'll be back in about 30 seconds. And we are back, folks, on Roundabout Sports. Well, it is okay. We got our good friend Joe right back, and we're rolling. You think it can stop us? Not a chance. Welcome back, Joe.
Nothing like live media, right?
Exactly, but hey, it's something we're all too familiar with. Um, so before the unfortunate incident, so I had mentioned about you being a former play-by-play guy at the Gateway Grizzlies, and I was just wondering if you could tell the audience what kind of got you into that position.
Man, you know, everything that I have done in my broadcast career, I think is a product of obviously it's a product of work I've done. It's a product of people being willing to help me out and put me in the right spot. So when it came to Gateway, I had worked a couple of summers in St. Louis at KFNS, the all sports radio, the only all sports station at the time. And when I got back to St. Louis after graduating, I started talking to some of those folks, and they put me in touch with the people that were going to be running the Gateway Grizzlies. They had just started. They had just they hadn't played a game yet. So I got in touch with them, and the very first season in 2001, we had a real interesting setup. They didn't have a permanent stadium. They were playing in a temporary stadium. They had a kind of a temporary network set up for the radio, and they had a gentleman out of Sparta, Illinois, who was going to be doing the broadcasts, and I was going to run this whole network for them. And then on home games, I would get to do a little color, a little play-by-play. And so that's how I started. I got connected with them. I jumped in and did that, and then it turned out that broadcaster was leaving after the first season in 2001, and I slid over in 2002, and from 2002 to 2000, I was the number one there.
I was gonna say that is definitely quite the long time for the Gateway Grizzlies, and they're always a pleasure to go out and go see in Sauget, Illinois. Um, I think one thing a lot of people and when promoting your appearance on this show, a lot of people had mentioned how they knew you through SIUE. How long have you been a part of SIUE in honestly any capacity?
Yeah, this is my 14th school year at SIUE, which interestingly enough came through my work at the Grizzlies. Again, it was sort of right place, right time, right connections. When SIUE was moving to Division One, which would have been the 2008-2009 school year, was their first year move to Division One. I had contacted some folks, tried to get in touch, see what they were planning for radio, and as it turned out, in 2008, their last season in Division Two, they hosted the Division Two World Series with Missouri St. Louis at the ballpark at GCS Credit Union Ballpark, where the Grizzlies play. And the GM at the Grizzlies connected with the athletic director at SIUE and said we should kind of use him in both ways. And so for 2 years, I did school years at SIUE on the radio. I did the summers at Gateway on the radio. And then after the 2010 season is when I moved up to SIUE full time year round.
What got you into your love of being involved with media relations, broadcasting, production, just of that field in general? Because it's definitely something that, you know, connections are crucial. Connections with others are definitely crucial, but at the same time, much like anything, having so much heart and determination, and that's what's kept you in the business for so long, definitely is just how determined and hardworking you are. But where did that love of it come from?
I think it started with sports. And when I went to school, when I went to college at Dayton, I went thinking I was maybe going to be a business major, a marketing guy, and I could go work for a team. And when I got there, I started just working. I started doing some work for the radio station, which was just anybody could sign shift. And I was doing some sports stuff with some guys I knew. And then there was a minor league hockey team in Dayton, Ohio called the Dayton Bombers, and there was nobody doing their games. And our college radio station said we would do their games. And so I started rotating with a couple of other guys calling minor league hockey. That was my first real full play by play. And I was just hooked. I loved it. And immediately switched to be a broadcast major and started doing anything I could to do more sports. At the same time, as a sophomore, I started working in the sports information office at Dayton as a student and kind of got to see the other side, the media relations side of things. And it's tough to do both, but I also feel like I'm better at both because I'm doing both. As a media relations person, I think that I have a pretty good handle on what broadcasters want because I'm a broadcaster. As a broadcaster, I know what I want in my game notes, so I make my game notes pretty good, for myself and for others. So I think it all works together in my favor.
Yeah, they really kind of tie into each other. For me, it was just something I dreamed of when I was 8 years old, being just a big sports fan. And then, I used to type up little blurbs just on the computer, um, as an elementary schooler, just recapping football games just for the heck of it. And it wasn't, honestly, I got to give a big shout out to Mr. Matthew Schott at Francis House Central, my high school alma mater, who which they are celebrating their 25th anniversary. So shout out to my old high school for 25 years of existing. Gotta rock that Spartan Nation. And anyway, Mr. Schott, he saw the potential in me, but he also noticed I was hesitant to let it out. I was like, I did all these journalism articles. I was doing podcasts on my own time, but I never had taken that next step. So he convinced me to join the newspaper staff. And from then on, I've written for Channel 5, Art City Media, all this stuff. And, the passion just keeps me going. And, the thing I love most is just the people you get to meet along the way. Such as yourself, but just a few weeks ago, I was able to talk to Ray King on the show. I've had former Rams DN Tioka Jackson. I've had Dave McGuire on this show. I've had wrestling personalities such as Luke Roberts on here. And then over the years in broadcast, this is my 10th year in journalism. So that types of stuff keeps me going. Those type of feel good stories. And I just tell
Dane
myself
McGuire was a student at SIUE who worked for my staff when I first started there.
See, that is awesome. Dane is, and I've said this before, Dane is, I'm going to put us both out of the studio for just like 5. I-70 Sports Media logo. Dane was the one
That's
that
awesome.
designed it, and he did a hell of a job. I could not, we had a big reveal for it just a couple weeks ago, and I could not thank him enough for the job he did. But no, it's just great. And then it's awesome that you've been involved in SIUE so long because going to different places is great and all, but to be able to stick around at one place for a long time and definitely leave your mark is a whole nother.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm lucky. I'm a St. Louis guy, born and raised. Went away for school, obviously, but came back and was so fortunate to work for the Grizzlies as long as I did, and I wouldn't have stayed there obviously if it wasn't a great organization. I believe strongly in everything that they do from the product on the field to the entertainment in the stands to what they do for interns and folks coming up as far as learning the business, not just from broadcast, but just the sports business period. So I believe in them heavily, and I loved my time there. And I feel the same about SIUE. I wouldn't have been there for 14 years if I didn't love where I work and the people I work with. You mentioned people and the people you cross paths with, and that's how I feel about everybody at SIUE as well. And I couldn't think of a better way to spend my time than promoting the stories and telling the stories of the student athletes every single day at SIUE and what they do and the amazing things they do on the court, on the field, in the classroom, in the community. There's so much that they do that I'm happy to promote.
And, we love having you a part of everything, especially part of, St. Louis. Got to represent the 314 as best as possible. And yeah, just being a part of SIUE for 14 years. And like you said at the beginning of the interview, this will be your fourth year involved with the top notch Cardinals broadcasting team at KMOX. The work that they do is, everybody knows, it's nationwide renowned. How KMOX is as far as a quality radio station. Um, so here's my next question for you. What's next? How long do you feel that you can keep going doing what you love? At what, have you ever given it any thought, or just
I
kind of
mean, I
just roll with it?
I certainly think about other stuff. I mean, I'm happy doing the things that I do, and that's why I continue to do them. So, I'm not looking to go anywhere. As I said, I'm a St. Louis guy. I have a family here. My wife is from St. Louis. We have two kids. Um, just sort of still being new to the Cardinals coverage. I really am enjoying that aspect of, it's a heck of a side gig to have. Like I said, growing up listening to Jack Buck and to Mike Shannon on Cardinals radio, and I'm old enough that there wasn't a Bally Sports and there wasn't every single game on TV, so we listened to a lot on radio. And that again, that's another prime example of really just my contacts, staying in touch with people. When I got called to have a lunch in the middle of 2019, I had no idea where it might lead, and I'm thankful to Steve Moore at KMOX and Tom Ackerman at KMOX for believing that I could do this job and bringing me on to do this job and be part of KMOX and be part of, as you said, this legendary radio station, and still to this day, the biggest market in the biggest radio network in Major League Baseball, 147 stations.
I think one of the most interesting, you talk about the market size, you talk about the um just the reach that KMOX has. I think one of my favorite stories as an example of that, and I forget how many decades ago this was. Um, but my dad told me a story about how, for a while he lived in Atlanta, in the Atlanta metro area. But he told me that at nighttime you could get the Cardinals radio broadcast from KMOX all the way down from Atlanta. And I know when I helped my friend move out of college in Columbia years ago, we could hear Cardinal games well out there, So, like you said, television markets have always been very iffy when it comes to broadcasting games, especially when the blackout policies used to be something that we had a lot. I had a lot growing up too. If the game wasn't sold out, you weren't seeing the team on TV. It was plain and simple. I mean, and here we are now where even if a game has 800 fans, look at the Marlins games, then they still get televised. And but the radio, so here's my next question that kind of transitions when you talk about the television markets and the radio markets. Do you think there's a decline in the radio industry as far as not just jobs, but just the medium as a whole?
Yeah, I feel like there probably is, which is sad to me because I'm a radio person at heart. It's what I've always done. It's Like I said, it really is what connects me to the sports. I still believe greatly in it. I there are, like I said, 147 stations that think that it is worthwhile to carry a team in the middle of the country, right? And that all goes back to the reach that KMOX has, and the fact that there's no other station at 1120 in the country. So if you're on 1120 and you can hear a station, you're hearing KMOX out of St. Louis, Missouri, and that's a pretty big thing. But I think in general, I don't know that it's declining as much as the media is. It's just the proliferation, it's the fracturing, right? So now you have streaming, and now you have. I mean, you and I are doing something that I couldn't have dreamed of when I was in high school, when I was younger than that, certainly. So you've got the podcast, the video. I mean, we stream everything at SIUE to ESPN Plus. Again, something that we could not have imagined. Even 20 years ago, I could not have imagined that we would have every home event from our campus streamed to an ESPN platform. That just wasn't something that was available back then. So I think those kind of things are maybe kind of splintering the audience some. So I hope it's not a decline as much as it's just there's so many more choices.
I think the big thing, and you kind of hit on the head, is just how everything's been kind of splintering off into different sectors. You know, I feel like you don't get in this, and not you specifically, but any of us in general get a big initial audience anymore, because with streaming, with DVRing, with anything like on Spotify or any other things, Google Podcast, you can go back and rewatch, re-listen. So you're not going to have that big initial audience like you used to have. I think a prime example would be in professional wrestling. Go back during the Monday Night Wars in the late 90s and early 2000s. I mean, these shows, Nitro and Raw as War, were drawing 5.2, 4.8, I mean, weekly. Nowadays, if you can get even a 2.0 or something, and it's just, but at the same time, that's the initial audience. Then you look at the DVR stats and they're a lot higher. Look at all the streaming services that these shows are on, it's a lot higher. So, and it's kind of like when I do a show like this, I say to myself, it's about who tunes in at a certain point, even if not everybody tunes in right away. Obviously, you want as many as you can to tune in. You'd love them to be a part of the show, but with the way the technology and the medium and the media and the world is changing, you start to shift your thinking around and you start to adjust accordingly.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think that part of the obviously the appeal to something like you're doing right now is that it can be consumed whenever it's convenient for that person, and that's something that is completely different. Where when you talk about especially radio and local TV, the draw there is that's where you're going to get something live. For example, if you're listening to a morning show, you want the weather, you want the traffic, you want the kind of things that are affecting you right then and there, right? But for something like what you and I are doing right now, you mentioned the wrestling events, that's something that can be consumed at a later time. Even, now, obviously, TV shows, because we're DVRing them, or if we're not DVRing them, we're watching them on Netflix or Amazon or any of the streaming services. We watch them when we can, when we want to. But the other advantage of that is I'm not waiting, till next Friday to see the next episode. I could watch 5 episodes right now if I want. So, there's definitely a lot of good things there as well.
There really is. So, Joe, I got a couple more things to get I would love to get your input on. First, where can people find you on social to get connected with the man himself, Joe Pott, and the work he does for SIUE and KMOX?
Twitter's easy. It's my name with an underscore in the middle. So it's JOE_POTT. Instagram is JR Pot. Those are the two big ones. And then it's me on Facebook. So I'm me everywhere. If you find me, if you see my name, it's probably me. There's thankfully not a lot of pots out there, not without the S.
Right, and that's what I love about your last name, especially. Is just that I was able to have the pot of gold play on
That's good.
words.
I like it. Nice.
Had it
Well
work
done.
perfectly. So my last seat, and this is a tradition I ask everybody when they're on the show, and it's usually the final question I always ask every guest. What is the best piece of advice that you, Joe Pott, can give to someone in the world today who's just, with everything going on in the world, that's trying so hard to just accomplish something they believe in? What's the best advice that you could give them?
Um, that's really a good question. It's a good way to finish it out. There's so many things that have served me well, but I think above all, it's how you treat people. You mentioned it that we're in this business, you and I, and all the rest of us, and we get to meet great people. We get to talk to great people, whether it's in an interview. Sometimes it's real quickly in passing, but I just think about how I would want folks to treat me, and I hope that I'm treating those folks the same way. And the folks that I meet, I wouldn't want anybody to come away from a meeting with me thinking, man, boy, what a jerk. I don't I don't want anything like that, obviously. So I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, the obvious thing is keep those connections, don't burn any bridges. All of those things have come back and have helped me in my career. I'm not here without so many other people that have put me in touch with others, or led me in the right direction, or have been willing even just to sit down and give me some advice. So I'm appreciative of all of that. But really, I hope that when people come away from meeting me and talking to me, that they have a good feeling.
Well, I've definitely had a good feeling talking with you this interview. It has been an absolute pleasure, Joe. Your enthusiasm, your work ethic. KMOX is definitely very lucky, and I hope you keep doing your thing as long as you want to.
Well,
That's the
Jeremy,
most
I
important thing.
I appreciate it. Appreciate you taking the time. This is fantastic. Again, what a great outlet, and how lucky you and I are to be doing this and talking about sports for a living, right?
Exactly. I don't think there's anything that can really beat it, and I look forward to when I will have the pleasure of having you on again, because I know, and I can't wait to see you in person too, so we can actually definitely chill back on a few drinks and talk some good baseball.
Absolutely. Thanks, man.
You're welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Joe Pott with KMOX and SIUE here on Roundabout Sports. We'll be right back. Joe, you have yourself a wonderful night, my friend.
Thank
And
you.
no, it's my pleasure. It has been great having you on. And I know the audience that's tuning in is thankful as well. So, no, definitely. So, we will have you on later, okay, my friend?
Sounds
Can't wait to
great.
talk to you again.
Sounds great.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
You're welcome. What an awesome guy Joe Pott is, ladies and gentlemen. I'm so thankful he had taken time out of his busy schedule because, after all, opening day is tomorrow. That is right. Whether you're a Royals fan, Cardinals fan, Guardians fan, Orioles fan, Yankees, Brewers, hell, whatever team, Mariners, I don't really care as long as you like baseball. We are back. MLB 2K22 is back. So I'm looking forward to it. And in the comments below, be sure to tell us who you think is your favorite to win the World Series this year. I know there has been a lot of interesting choices. I know most will probably say the Dodgers, but come on. I would love nothing more than to see the Dodgers lose. And I can say that for many reasons. A, I'm a Cardinals fan. And B, sick of the Dodgers always trying to buy all the high profile free agents. Anyway, anywho, I'm going to start rambling. Folks, I am so appreciative of you all being on this evening, tuning in, listening. I also want to make sure to remind everybody that tomorrow night, Adam Frex will be airing a new episode of Talking Dynasty. And you can find that on Facebook and on Twitter at Talking Dynasty. And you can find it here on Interstate 70 Sports Media on our Facebook and our Twitter page. And you can also, if you want to advertise with us, we are always looking. We support local. That is who we go to first. Just direct message myself on Facebook or Twitter, or direct message Adam Frex on Facebook or Twitter to try to get more info on that. We have a lot of great advertising deals in place. And also, I want to give shout outs to our amazing staff that we have here at Interstate 70 Sports Media. Eileen Holder, Parker Bina, Andy Cockerill, James Knox, our I-70 Sports Media Insider. And then, of course, I've mentioned Adam's name time and time again. And Alistair Furnell. I mean, he does amazing soccer and football coverage. And yeah, I'm just so grateful for this team that they believe in me, that we all believe in each other. We're excited for what's to come in the future. Lastly, as always, I am putting out at the bottom of the screen the National Suicide Hotline. Mental health and suicide awareness are things that really need to be paid attention to more often than they are. The hotline is open 24/7, 365, 366 on leap years. The phone number is as follows: 1-800-273-8255. That's 1-800-273-8255. Just know that you're never alone. Somebody always loves you, and we love all you here at Interstate 70 Sports Media. So with all that said, be sure to tune in next week for another episode of Roundabout Sports. I'm sure it's going to be just as exciting as this episode and every one before. So with that, always remember, life is a book full of empty pages just waiting to be written in. Make your lives worth reading. This is Jeremy Karp saying good night.